So what's the challenge? We need to double food availability in the next 25 to 50 years. There'll be 9 billion people rather than 6.5 billion people. The world GDP will probably grow by a factor of 4, even though we're going through a recession at the moment. Therefore, the type and nutritional value of food will have to increase. And it needs to be affordable, and we need to get it in a way that is environmentally as well as socially sustainable. So we need enhanced growth in the agricultural sector to feed the world, to stimulate the livelihoods of the poor, to stimulate economic growth in countries where agriculture is a significant percentage of the GDP, and we have to do it while meeting food safety standards. We have to do it with less labour, more disease, rural to urban migration, less water, competition from other sectors, less arable land, competition from energy crops, high energy prices, totally distorted trade policies, OECD subsidies, land policy conflicts, loss of biodiversity, increasing levels of air and water pollution, and a changing climate. So we have to double food production. At the same time, we've got these little challenges. Real problem, we have been very successful in the agricultural sector, but the way we've actually been successful is to focus on producing more and more food, critical after the Second World War, where there was a lack of food even throughout Europe. But nitrogen fertilization, it's led to more nitrous oxide emissions into the atmosphere, a major driver of climate change. We've extensified, we've cut down our grasslands, we've cut down the forests in the world effectively to actually expand our agricultural land, our pastoral land for livestock. It's led to unsustainable forestry. It's led to carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere, another driver of climate change. As we've actually destroyed our forests, we've led to a loss of biodiversity at the genetic and species level. We're losing the wild relatives of our plants and the genetic variability of the plants that we need to deal with climate change and other environmental stresses. The way we've irrigated our land, the way we've tilled our land has led to soil erosion, land degradation. So the agricultural sector has actually affected our environment. But as we see climate change, as we see loss of biodiversity, as we see land degradation, it's making it harder and harder to produce the crops we want. So it's a two-way street. Very simple, decade of the 2020s, 2050s and 2080s. All the colours in yellow and orange, do they even show? Sort of. Decreased productivity. And as you can see, even by the 2020s, a significant decrease in productivity throughout all of Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Australia. In other words, all the developing countries. What we see by the 2050s is something similar, and by the 2080s, by the 2020s, global productivity is roughly constant because we get an increase in productivity in the high temperate, middle and high temperate latitudes. But by the 2080s, we would project, without major changes, of course, in our ability to deal with climate change, we would actually see a decrease in agricultural productivity throughout the world. That will not be the situation if we use modern science to address it, and I'll come to that in a minute. Let me not bother with this. This is an interesting slide that's just come out from IPRI. They literally have only produced this in the last couple of weeks. What it shows is in yellow, the level of child malnutrition today by region. What you see in orange, the next colour up, is what you would predict in 2050 without climate change, so significant decrease in South Asia, significant decrease in East Asia. What you see in red is what would happen in the case of climate change. Still less than today, but significantly more with and without climate change. The disastrous thing, unfortunately, is sub-Saharan Africa, and this particular model suggests even without climate change there'll be an increase in child malnutrition, and with climate change even worse. So climate change is a serious issue for child malnutrition. The price of cereals. Yellow is the price today. The orange is the price with no climate change by 2050, and you would see an increase. And a lot of this is a scarcity of resources such as water. This is a new set of predictions that are coming out of these econometric models, because until recently, most models would have suggested food prices going down and down over time. These new models are now suggesting an increase. Red is the price with climate change. And as you can see, especially for wheat, the implications of climate change are severe on food prices. Major issue for poverty and the livelihoods of the poor. So no longer can agriculture and food be thought of production alone. We have to view agriculture in its form of multifunctionality. We have to place agriculture into an environmental context, which I've talked to, an economic context, income, marketing and trade, and a social context. The role of women in sub-Saharan Africa is absolutely critical. The role of traditional and indigenous knowledge, absolutely critical. Culture, social issues, vital. So we need to pay farmers not only to produce food, but for the ecosystem services, the public goods of maintaining our soils, our water, our climate, and our biodiversity. And so what are the S&T challenges? Well, I've inferred them already. Fundamentally, we have to address water deficit problems. We have to improve temperature tolerance of crops, how to deal with new emerging pests and diseases, how to deal with soil fertility, how to reduce our energy inputs, especially as energy prices are bound to start going up soon, how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the agricultural sector, how do we improve the nutritional quality of food, how do we reduce post-harvest loss? 40% of food produced in developing countries never makes it to market. It rots before it gets to market. Sounds bad. 40% of all food that gets to market in OECD countries is wasted, either in the supermarket or in our refrigerators or on our plates or in restaurants. 40% of food is wasted either before it gets to market in developing countries or once it gets to market in the UK, Europe, the USA, and we have to also improve food security. A major set of challenges for the academic community. So if we want pro-poor climate change policies, we need them at all levels. We need to deal with climate change, extreme weather events. We have to recognise demographic change is important. We have to understand conflict and crisis is important. So we need to think about how do you select crops and livestock? How do we do irrigation and water technology much better? How do you have water allocation policies? How do you put prices on water? What are our trade policies regionally and globally? And we need to deal with these various issues all the way from the farm level to the global level. It's not one level. We have to have policies that mesh together from the global, the regional, national, basin and farm level. The good news is we can solve today's hunger problems without any advances in science and technology. Literally all of the problems of hunger today can be addressed, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the agricultural assessment I directed, using current technologies. We need to emphasise agroecological practices, no-till, integrated pest management, integrated natural resource management, couple it with decreased post-harvest loss. But to do it, we have to totally change the trade system, get rid of OECD subsidies, and its rural development. We have to make sure that the rural development is roads, education, empowerment of women, microfinancing. It is not a technology problem, it's a distributional issue. But if we're going to meet the needs of the future, a population that's 50% larger, a world where the economy has grown by a factor of 4, a world where we've got climate change, loss of biodiversity, soil and water degradation, advanced biotechnologies may well be, almost certainly will be needed to address that issue of increased productivity and address issues such as plant diseases, animal diseases, pests. But we need to understand the risks and benefits on a case-by-case basis. We need to place the farmer in the middle, understand their needs, integrate local and traditional knowledge with the knowledge that you get from universities, government labs. I've already said it, we need to understand the role of women. We have to reform trade. We need to pay farmers for maintaining ecosystem services, and we need to increase both public and private sector investment in research and development. Water security, a major issue. By 2025, half the world's population will live under conditions of severe, and I stress severe water stress, even without climate change. Water quality is degrading in most parts of the world. 70% of all fresh water today is used in irrigation and part of it is wasted. We've lost over 50% of our wetlands around the world. And part of the reason is there is no cost recovery for water. Water is given away. It's meant to be a human right. But if you don't put a price on a scarce resource, it's wasted.